All right, let's do it live on a First Friday edition of the program. Certainly not a miracle because it's been a morning, to say the least. Merely Beau, the great Z, although you may need that cocktail after you get all the details of everything that's come to light over the course of this morning and the realities of where you are. Z, I know you've been in the facility. You've been around. I'm obviously remotely today. What do you make of this? We feared that this would be the case. There's a lot to unpack here, but just as this news is coming in, where's your head at, pal?
We got to find a way to beat the Raiders on Saturday. Nobody's going to feel sorry for the Cleveland Browns. And quite frankly, I think that you still can go out there and do that. But to lose, Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield the day after you had lost, Jedrick Wills and Austin Hooper and Jarvis Landry and Tack McKinley and all that, it's a tough situation for the Cleveland Browns. But right now, this is find a way Saturday. That's what we said yesterday. I still say it. I got the depth chart here. I've got an idea of what things are going to look like for now, but you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. I think that there's obviously a chance that tomorrow brings more. It typically doesn't go 8-6-0, so we've got to brace ourselves. We've got to hope for the best, and get ready with the guys that we've got. Get ready to play and beat a team that is beatable. This is a beatable football team. Yes, they are good, but the Browns have got to find a way.
They're not good. They're not good. They're terrible. They got beat 48-2.
They just
They're
beat
terrible.
the Cowboys on Thanksgiving.
No, and I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm just saying you can only do so much, and they've been through a lot as an organization, and they're starting to unravel quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 weeks here. And so that's the reality. And if you're at full strength, I mean, what were we, 6.5-point favorites going into this one before all of this?
Yes.
6.5, 7. It was something around that. So that tells
Down
you kind of
to
like
3.
where you think where you are based on when you thought you had everybody healthy and the difference between the two teams. To go over the specifics, the list was added to today. Troy Hill, John Johnson, Baker Mayfield, Malik McDowell, among the considerable and important players who were placed on the COVID-19 list. Beyond that, the names that we had yesterday. So this is now a big list. And, of course, the headliner this morning, and where – guys, we kind of led you to this yesterday. Not that this wasn't a scores, it's just common sense. I mean, see, you and I have been doing shows in a COVID-related world now for 2 football seasons, so we know how these things go. And typically where you see an outbreak, you see a real outbreak, and it's something that, kind of waterfalls throughout the week. And that's happened here. It's happened in other places. By the way, we're not alone. The Los Angeles Rams have 9 players that went on the COVID list today as well. The Washington football team currently has 11 players on the COVID list, so we're not alone. This is something that's happening around the league, and frankly, folks, it's happening around professional sports. The Brooklyn Nets last night played with 7 players. The Calgary Flames, I mentioned them yesterday, an NHL team, they have postponed their games, so they're not playing games this week because of the outbreak that they've had of more than 10 up there. Of course, this is Cleveland Browns Daily. We're most concerned about the Browns, but just to give you an idea of what's going on around the sports world. Of course, the headliner this morning was the Kevin Stefanski news. And I thought this statement from our group, our PR, was pretty interesting and really on point. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, who has been vaccinated, received a booster, has tested positive, and has immediately self-isolated. He's feeling fine and will continue his head coaching duties virtually as we prepare for Las Vegas for the game against the Raiders. Should Coach Stefanski not produce 2 negative tests by Saturday, special teams coordinator Mike Preefer will serve as acting head coach, and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt will serve as play caller in Saturday's game. Additionally, acting running backs coach Ryan Cordell has tested positive as well. So, from the Stefanski thing, and I think this is what, and I've seen some reporting that obviously the NFL owners are meeting right now, and I think that they have some real decisions to make in terms of how we're going to continue to operate in this world that we currently operate in, because the facts of this statement that we put out about Kevin Stefanski cannot be ignored. He's been vaccinated. He's received a booster. He has had COVID previously, last year. We remember all too well. The line that is most important, I think, is he's feeling fine.
Right. Yep.
So, again, this is where I think we need to be a little bit malleable in terms of how we judge this now, the rules on this, the laws on this, if you will. This is a man who is vaccinated and has received a booster around other people who are vaccinated predominantly. He's said many times that our team is almost entirely vaccinated. We know we have one of the highest vaccination rates in all of the National Football League. If we have a bunch of vaccinated players who are asymptomatic, why are we testing them when they're around other vaccinated people? This is me talking, not the organization, obviously. The NFL will speak on this. We'll speak on this at some point this afternoon, but I think this leads to the bigger question. And, of course, you're right. Yes, go win the game, right? Find a way, win a game, all of those things. All those things apply. But this is an absurd circumstance, and you could be – and it's not just us. We're not an isolated incident, right? The Rams are hit. By the way, the Rams had 9 on their list, and that was by 8 a.m. this morning.
Yep.
They played Monday, which means they played with COVID, which means my guess is you will see a rash of COVID amongst the Arizona Cardinal players.
Yeah, it's a thing. I don't know.
It's got to be addressed, Z.
It
has to be.
Look,
there's got to be some sort of open-mindedness to where we are.
Albert Breer says that owners and execs were told by the NFL this morning the league is discussing significant changes to the COVID-19 protocols with the union. One thing explicitly discussed was altering the 10-day waiting period for asymptomatic players who continue to test positive, I'm told. That's the latest update that he has. But, yeah, you've got to get somewhere. We've got to come away with it. And I think, what we're seeing is Omicron is a very highly contagious variant. And unfortunately, Northeast Ohio is basically – one of the hottest spots right now on the globe, but that it is not thus far. And again, I'm no doctor. Just saying anecdotally what people have said about it is that it does not seem to be as serious in terms of its effects as some of the other variants. So highly contagious means more positives, but no serious effects. So how do you navigate those waters as the National Football League, which is what this show is about, and then societally at large is another discussion. But yeah, this is wild. And for those who are watching on the stream, here's our depth chart, and you can see it here. Everybody that's highlighted is not expected to play, although you hope Greg Newsome can be back. I have him currently highlighted in the concussion protocol. And then the greens are going to be all the changes. And so you think about the starting lineup on offense, 5 new starters there, 4 new starters on defense at least, and it could be more as this week goes on. But
I think that you hit on something with the variant, the Omicron variant or whatever it is. I think, but and again, we're not practicing medicine. We're 2 guys on the radio. But one point of vaccine is vaccine prevents the worst of it. When you get a flu vaccine, the idea is that you don't end up in the hospital with the flu.
Right.
When you get a COVID vaccine, the understanding is that this will prevent the worst of it. So if you're in a situation where, and everybody knew the rules going into this, from a vax, non-vax, we know how much the National Football League has pushed the vaccination, and many of the players, and you can think of that whatever you want, that's your own opinion. Most players have it. I know we have a very high vaccination rate, among the highest in the league. That we talked about that months ago, they made it hard for unvaccinated players. But the point of a vaccine is to lessen the damage and lessen the time you're out. So in that sense, the vaccine is working in that sense. It doesn't mean that you can't get it. It doesn't mean you can't pass it. That's not what a vaccine's all about. What a vaccine's all about is to limit the amount of damage it can do. And that is something that, as you sit around here, buddy, we play Saturday, and we play the following Saturday. We play a game against the Raiders, where we're a game out of first in our division.
Yep.
And again, this is football. This is a football show. This isn't a society at large show. This is a football show. And we're not alone. The Rams play really big games. The Washington football team is in a playoff hunt. There are television partners. There are a lot of factors to this. I think the Breer tweet that you mentioned is the most consequential tweet, that potentially that 10-day window, because as you know, if you do test positive, you can test positive for a long time.
Sure.
After you no longer have symptoms, it can no longer spread. We all know that.
Of course. And one of the other things that I saw appear on social media was, and that is not happening for sure, but that was, discussed as maybe something they're thinking about, is that if players get boosted, that they would then no longer have to be tested, which would not help us, but I think it would be certainly could help something if for the league going forward. Now, again, we'll see where this all shakes out. I think the best news right now is, from a human standpoint, is that the guys on our roster that have tested positive that we have heard of are all feeling well. that they are not
Yeah.
feeling sick, and that, as Kevin Stefanski is asymptomatic. I got a chance to talk with him today, multiple times, in fact, and he's doing well. I think he's frustrated. He wants to be out there with this team. This is a major game, and to know that, we're going to have to be somewhat shorthanded or significantly so, I should say, is difficult. It's tough. But we've got to overcome it. We've got to find a way. And I think the rest of the goal from this week, for the next 3 days, is what must we do to beat the Raiders? We don't have to be the best team in the NFL for this week, for week number 15. We don't have to be the best team in the NFL. What we've got to be is better than the Raiders. When the scoreboard shows 0-0 on the time, we need more points than them. Whatever way we must do that, it doesn't matter. Just get it done, find a way. And I think we still have a lot of stars. I mean, we still have a lot of guys of real consequence as of today ready to go.
Well, as of today is the key to that, because, you really won't probably know who you're going to have entirely until Friday is probably the way it's going to go. I mean, it'd be different if you played Sunday. Then you'd have a couple of days. You're basically going to have – I mean, this very well could be a lot similar to what we – not quite as dramatic, but similar to what we did last year with the Jets, where – let's have a walkthrough in a parking garage and hope for the best. I mean, that could be kind of what you're headed for by the time you get to Saturday and you get a full list of whatever this could be. And again, not just a Cleveland Browns problem, guys. Not just.
No.
9 with the Rams in the first day of their testing. We had 6. What does that tell you if you just follow the common sense here? What does that tell you the next couple of days are in store for them? And I also mentioned the football team, which has 11 players currently on the COVID list. So
yep.
These are significant players. I mean, it's Odell's among those with the Rams. So these are important players. I don't know that anyone has more significant players than we do when you consider our quarterback and coach and half the line and everything else is involved in this thing. You're right. The reality is, as of right now, and this is probably the way it's going to go, you're going to play a game on Saturday and no one's going to feel sorry for it, and you got to find a way to win. In terms of what could come of this, though, I guess if there's good news in this, if there's a silver lining, it's that all of the owners are together right now, and they've witnessed what's happened here in the last 24 hours.
Yep.
And so there is an ability here for, some change, some common sense, and maybe that can be done. The issue here is you are up against a major wall in the standpoint that we are playing on Christmas.
Yeah. So anybody who would test positive tomorrow would be out for that game as well,
based on the current
setup. Right. So all the guys that tested positive today would be eligible for that game, most likely against the Green Bay Packers. Now, Gibby and I were talking about it, and it's a good point. If we travel on Friday, I'm guessing they would have to come on different means Saturday to come to that game. Now, we've seen people do that. I think Ben Roethlisberger has done that. T.J. Watt has done that. And so we've seen that in the NFL already. But yeah, you're up against it. Our schedule is odd. It's no favors that it's Saturday, for us right here in this crazy stretch. But let's just go to the bright side. If you can get through this and you can find a way to win this game, you're likely going to be atop the division after it. Not a lot of people expect, the Browns to go to Green Bay and win it, but then you have a lot of principal people in the clear for the rest of the year and the playoffs.
You hope. You certainly hope. You could score Cleveland Browns season tickets from Sugardale and your local Meijer, plus the chance to kick a field goal to score 10 seasons worth of season tickets during a Browns game. Text Browns to 55678 to enter. The rules and regulations apply on that. Our great friend Dan Graziano, ESPN, will join us coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. OBM, Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns. Of all the X's O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. He is, quite simply put, our favorite information man in all of the National Football League. He is ESPN's NFL insider, Dan Graziano. He joins us on the hotline. Dan, we're obviously at the epicenter of this with all of the positive tests we've had. We know that the owners are meeting currently now. We've heard rumblings that perhaps there could be some amending to the policy, or maybe they're working towards that. What can you tell us?
So what's happening now, obviously the proliferation of positive tests around the league this week, there's concern, obviously, about, waning vaccine efficacy, the situation with booster shots, reluctance or desire by various people to get them. And really the people getting a little relaxed about the mitigation strategies, right? Like there's people at the players union, for example, that are worried that the players, who many of whom were reluctant to get the vaccine in the first place, are now feeling like, hey, if this is happening, if everyone's testing positive anyway, then why should we bother wearing masks? Why should we bother not going out? All that kind of stuff. And I think there's concern that it'll get worse as a result of that. So if they were to strengthen the protocols to mean, increased testing, daily testing, even if you're vaccinated, et cetera, I think there'd be some pushback on that from players who are, as many of us are, exhausted by this whole thing, and just sort of want to be, over and done with it. Part of the problem is, like, I don't want to say problem because they're trying to do the right thing, but part of the issue is players and personnel who are vaccinated, right, who are testing positive, who have no symptoms, and if they weren't testing them at all, they'd never know about it. And they say, well, then why can't we just play, right? And the answer is, of course, they don't want the virus spreading throughout the facility, and vaccinated people, even without symptoms, can spread it. So we have a situation here where it's bad, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, and it's about to impact the most significant part of the NFL season.
It is. And so what do you think, and it just comes at a time when the league is all together, what do you think comes out of this, and how quickly will something come out of this?
Everything that involves players has to be negotiated with between the league and the NFL Players Association, right? So if they want to change the protocols that are jointly established by those two groups, then it has to be a negotiation and basically collective bargaining. So I think there'll be some change. You saw the league and the PA put out booster requirements the other day for Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees. Not players, because that has to be negotiated with the union. I think they'll probably do something that addresses booster requirements for players. Like, for instance, if you're vaccinated, if you're considered by the league vaccinated, you have to get a booster by a certain date in order to maintain that status. But again, I think they're going to get pushback because a lot of the players that were reluctant to get the vaccine were given the impression that once they did, everything would be okay. And now here we are in December, and they're being told something different. So you can understand human nature, why people would push back on that. So it's delicate. I don't know exactly what's going to happen in terms of, like, the union has been pushing all along for daily testing for everybody. And the league has pushed back, saying daily testing makes people relax more about other mitigation strategies, and it gives a false sense of security, and our resources are better spent elsewhere in terms of fighting this thing. So I don't think they're going to get to the point where they're testing everybody daily. And in fact, it seems like there's some movement in the player ranks to test less frequently.
Right. We've seen reports that perhaps if people agree to get boosters, they would not be tested at all the rest of the season. What is the league stance, because this is so hard to navigate, right? If you have young, healthy, asymptomatic people who are testing,
yes,
do we really need to continue to treat this in this environment, in this bubble, as though it is the plague, which in some ways it's being treated as? How do you navigate that, and how do you navigate the end of the year? Because, by the way, just speaking from a Browns perspective, anything that changes on this regard, where they say, okay, now if they end up not testing people, that doesn't help us against the Raiders on Saturday, which could very well be the key to our season.
Absolutely, and that's unfortunate. And look, the Rams are dealing with something significant. In fact, when I called around this morning, the feeling was that the Rams were actually in worse shape. And that was the game they've had no discussion. Everyone should understand that there's been no discussion as of this morning about moving games or rescheduling. But when I brought up the possibility that they might have to do that, it was the Rams game that came up, not the Browns one. So it sounds like their situation is even more dire, if you can believe that. So, yes, you're right. If they make a change that relaxes testing protocols, then someone who's in the exact same situation the Browns are in right now, 2 weeks from now, might not have to play shorthanded. And that would be, of course, unfair. But honestly, guys, it's really just a reminder to everyone, not just in football, but around the world, like how little we still know about how to fight this thing, right? I mean, we're much better off than we were a year and a half ago, but I think you're probably right if you think that somewhere down the road, when COVID-19 is still a presence in the world, and there are more and more ways of preventing it and treating it, that there don't have to be these kinds of strategies in place, and that people who catch it will be fine because there are ways to combat it. But right now, the NFL and governing bodies around the world don't really feel like we're at that point, and they still want to limit the spread because, if you don't limit spread, you have rising hospitalization rates and all that kind of stuff that caused all the problems back last March.
Dan, we had postponements last year at the early part of the season. We've had those type of things, and we held games off, and it got the Steelers pretty good. They had basically lost their bye week as a part of it. This year we haven't had that. What do you believe to be the threshold? You mentioned the Rams situation. Our list is significant, and we're just a couple of days out from having to play on Saturday. But, let's remember it's Wednesday. We could have more tomorrow, and it could be upwards of 15, 18. What's a number that it's too much that the league would act this year?
So the thing to understand about last year's postponements is the league was very consistent saying we will not postpone or reschedule a game just because a team is shorthanded. We would do it if we felt like it wasn't safe for that team to assemble, right? Like if there's spread going on in the facility, we don't want to put these guys on a plane or put them all in the same locker room together on game day. So that still applies. That reasoning still applies. The league feels like with the expanded practice squads and the relaxation of practice squad rules where you can elevate people for this reason, teams should be able to be covered personnel-wise. So they have to this point, they have not postponed a game just because someone was shorthanded. And right now, what they're trying to figure out is this spreading from player to player, from person to person in the Browns facility, or are people contracting it from outside the facility? And so what they do is they do like genetic sequencing where they can tell what kind of variant it is and therefore whether it's related, right? If the genes or whatever don't match up, then they know that it's not spreading in the facility because they have 2 different strains of it or 3 different strains of it or 5 different strains of it. So that kind of stuff is what goes on. If they felt like the Browns were spreading it to each other by being together, then that's the kind of thing under last year's guidelines that would have prompted a postponement. At this point, that's not. That's not what they think it is. But again, they're still continuing to work on that.
So has anyone thrown out a number in terms of, okay, we've got 30, that's enough?
No, again, that was kind of the point, right? Like there's not a number.
There isn't. Okay.
If you have 30, right, and they don't feel like it's being spread within the facility, then that's 30 guys that, and again, this is an extreme example, right? Then that's 30 guys they say caught it outside, at a restaurant or whatever, and that's sort of a tough luck situation, right, in terms of your competitive disadvantage. If they felt like everybody had the same strain and was passing it to each other, we don't want these guys to be together overnight or flying somewhere or on game day. And the Browns are home, right, on Saturday, so that wouldn't be necessarily an issue travel-wise. So that would be the kind of thing that, again, under last year's procedures would have necessitated a postponement. Now, we're in week 15 of a season where this hasn't happened yet and where they thought it would be easier to manage, correctly or incorrectly. So do they come up with some other way of doing it? Again, as of this morning, adamantly from the league, no discussion at this point of moving games. But there are certainly people associated with this situation who feel like there might need to be.
It is just such a tricky thing, and you think about, at what point do you treat the NFL like most workplaces are dealing with their employees, right? Where it's you're not. I don't know anybody else who's getting tested that isn't a frontline worker that's getting tested regularly other than, us here in the league. And for me, I got it, right after we played the Bengals. And so I'm not in the testing protocol for 90 days because you can still test positive even well after you've had the virus. But, you just wonder at some point, I think you made it earlier, was when do we stop fearing this on a massive level and figure out more how do we live with it? And in this case for the league, play with it.
So, here's the thing, right? Like, that's true, and that's true worldwide. But these protocols that the league and union put in place for this year were put in place in August, right?
Yep.
When the Delta variant was starting to proliferate, when hospitalizations were going back. So this was all aimed at treating a certain thing that was happening at that time, and it kept them in place. So you're right. If they get through this season, okay, then they reassess. What's the state of things going into next year's mini camps, next year's training camps, next year's season, and maybe they're treating it differently. But to change it on the fly is complicated for a lot of reasons, some of which you guys have addressed in your questions to me just now, and I'm sure over the course of the rest of your show. So that's what they're doing right now, is trying to figure out what changes, if any, can and need to be made in order for them to get through this season, and most importantly, keep everybody safe. Because, Nate, you're talking about you don't have to test because you could still test positive. The reason you don't have to test for 90 days is because the league has established with its medical advisors that having had it gives you a level of immunity.
Right.
Right. So that along with
that you can still test positive.
Have to be by rules.
Sure.
Right. Exactly. But they're not worried about you getting sick because between your vaccine and the fact that you've already had it, that you have some level of immunity that protects you. I think that's the reason you get the 90-day exception.
Right. And the fact that you could still be, after that time, there are people who could test positive up to 90 days after contracting the virus, even though they don't actually have it. It's just dead virus that's sloughed off in their system. Dan, we've spent this whole time talking to you, and the fact is that the Browns are one game out of first place in their division. The Browns, if they win this week with Baltimore playing in Green Bay, and you can never count on results, and certainly not the 2021 edition of the National Football League, but good chance they could be in first place controlling their destiny with 3 games to go. What do you kind of make of this season for the Browns, where they've gotten themselves coming off of not necessarily the easiest, got pretty stressful, looked like it was going to be easy, but a huge win over the Ravens?
Yeah, they're right in it. And again, that's what's unfortunate about they're going to be missing so many guys on Saturday, likely. There's an opportunity here. As up and down as their season has been, there's an opportunity. And I mean, the Bengals, I think, the Browns beat the Bengals. Bengals have been a dominant team against Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And as a result, they have a division record that probably gives them the edge. If we assume that Baltimore's injuries are going to at some point catch up with them, and it's obviously a testament to their players and their coaching staff that they have the record they do in spite of it all.
Yes.
If they're going to slip, then there's an opportunity for Cleveland, Cincinnati, and really, honestly, even Pittsburgh to jump up and grab this thing. It's a wild and crazy division there's no way to know who's going to win it at this point. But these head-to-head games. But the other thing, like you talk about this Raider game, and again, you don't want to take anybody lightly. You can't assume results, like you said. Of all the games on everyone's schedule remaining in the AFC North, that Raider game kind of looked like the most winnable for anyone, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Bengals have the Chiefs still to come, and the Broncos, so if you lose that game because you're shorthanded, that could be very, very painful to the Browns' playoff chances, because that was an opportunity to maybe gain ground in a week where other people have some tougher matchups.
Dan, on days like this, you're the only guy we want to talk to. We thank you so much for giving us some of your time today, bud.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that, and anytime, happy to do it.
Our great friend Dan Graziano, ESPN NFL Insider. A lot to unpack there, Z. I think the big thing for Browns fans to hear there is that at this juncture, I wouldn't expect the cavalry coming over the hill, that you're going to be playing Saturday. And there's not a number. If that means guys playing special teams this could be a lot of people you don't know by the time you get to this game on Saturday or haven't heard from before. So that's kind of the reality of where this is trending, that this late in the week, even though the owners are together and huddled, you are up against a calendar here, pal, and it's a tight one.
You are, but we'll take some time. I know we have Coach coming up next, but we'll take some time to go through this. And I'm going to, I think, make everybody feel a little bit better if things stay where they are today. Now, we know that is probably, unfortunately, somewhat unlikely. And there are places where we can afford a few more dominoes to fall. There are places where we really cannot. But we'll go through both sides of the ball, what it should look like. And I think that you'll say, okay, this team still has enough of its stars and its horses that if we can play a good, tough, smart, clean football game, we can beat a Raiders team that, while it has some good traits and characteristics about it, has some major warts.
Huge. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, they've been outscored by about 80 points on the season, including getting absolutely drilled last week. So it is there. The opportunity is there. For a team of injury lawyers dedicated to every client every day, call 1-800-ELK-OHIO. Elk & Elk's a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. You'll hear from Coach Stefanski from the podium coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Well, here for my friends at Raising Cane's. Get the gift of a Raising Cane's gift card this year so that everyone on your list can enjoy hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers. Also, let Raising Cane's help you through the busy holiday season with hot, fresh, made-to-order chicken finger meals. Download the Raising Cane's mobile app and get clicking for chicken this holiday season. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love. Here's Coach Kevin Stefanski at the podium from earlier today.
We have a few more positives. Myself.
You guys are down.
The message to the team, as you can imagine, is we all have to just do our job. So that's what I'm doing, making sure that we're staying engaged in the meetings. Ran our meetings this morning, continuing to game plan and get ready for a big game on Saturday. We'll adjust the schedule this afternoon We'll bring the guys in for walkthroughs today. So we'll bring the defense in first. We'll be outside, masked up, spread out. Really, the guys will go from the parking lot right onto the field. Then we'll have a brief special teams walkthrough, and then we'll have an offensive walkthrough after that, and then add some more virtual meetings this afternoon. So really, that's where we are. We've been here before, and I don't feel much different than I felt yesterday in terms of everybody has to step up depending on who's available. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, Coach, how confident are you that you're going to be able to get the work in? You're not practicing these last couple of days. I understand Tuesday because coming off the game, but not being able to practice today, the possibility you might not going forward here. Just how confident are you guys going to be able to get the prep work in you need?
Yeah, Daryl, I tell you, you kind of lean on what you did last year, and we had weeks like this. So it's not ideal, obviously, but the hope is to get a full speed practice in tomorrow if we can. And we'll deal with tomorrow. But I think the guys understand what needs to get done today, and that's really what's most important.
And what, if anything, are you hearing from the NFL? A lot of fans are asking, could this thing be postponed if there's more positives, et cetera? Just what are you hearing from the league office right now? Is this thing going forward no matter what?
Yeah, again, I'm kind of keeping the focus on today. We have a game Saturday at 4:30, unless someone tells me otherwise. And really, we just have to focus on what we need to do to prepare. And that's our full expectation, is to get out there with our guys Saturday and go find a way.
Just to be blunt, would you like to see this game postponed?
I'd like to see the Browns play well versus the Raiders.
Hey, Kevin, I don't know if you know this answer. Do you know what variant you tested positive for?
I do not.
You don't. And along the lines of what Tony's just asking, Kevin, when does this become undoable? When does this become, not being able to put enough guys out there?
I'm not worried about that, Tom. I'm worried about today, having great meetings, our walkthrough. Really, that's what our focus is. And that's what I told the team, Tom. We have to focus on our job, and then we have to do our job. I understand that there's distractions. I understand that there's a lot going on, but I really don't care. I think what I care about is making sure that we have our best week of preparation.
Yeah, Kevin. So do you think it's possible you guys could get to Saturday without being able to do an actual practice? I mean, is it conceivable that you might have to do walkthroughs every day this week?
Yeah, Jake, I don't know. This is the best way to put it.
Do you have the lucky spot in the basement ready to go just in case?
It's ready to go just in case, like you said.
Yeah, Kevin, can you talk about, the notion, the idea of going into this game without Baker Mayfield and so many other guys, but without Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum having to start the game, and what you think the outlook is there?
Yeah, Mary Kay, I would tell you, spoke to Baker this morning, was on virtual meetings with him. He's locked in, and really that's what everybody has to do. We all, whether you're positive or not, injured or otherwise, you got to stay locked in and ready to go and see how it plays out. We're really trying to deal with things minute to minute and hour by hour here. But Baker specifically is locked in.
You guys, is there any chance of any of these getting reversed? Is it possible that there's something kind of weird going on with your testing, and that there's any hope whatsoever of anything changing?
Yeah, I don't know specific to that, Mary Kay. I think, as you know, the rules being that you have to return 2 negative tests. So that'll be our goal.
Kevin, with Alex Van Pelt and Mike Preefer, and you guys going through this, in the playoffs, how much can you lean on that experience? How much can they lean on that experience? And just, here you are again. I know it's not technically a playoff game, but season on the line, those guys in that spot, what's your confidence in them? Yeah,
my confidence, as you can imagine, is incredibly high with all of our coaches. And we have been through this before. So if I'm unavailable on Saturday, I have the utmost confidence in Coach Preef and AVP. And really, that's the mentality we have as an organization with our players, with our coaches. Next man up.
And do you have a next man up or next coach up, next woman up? Because Callie is on the staff, obviously, for running backs. What are you doing there, Kevin?
Yeah, AVP and I are working through that. Kevin Rogers, who's one of our senior assistants, is in that room already. So we'll work through that.
Hey, Coach Stefanski, can you tell us, are the majority of these guys asymptomatic right now? How is everybody feeling in general?
Yeah, Aditi, I can't get into the specifics, but I'm feeling fine if you care.
Well, I do. Of course I care. Is there a set? My understanding is that you only have one unvaccinated player on your entire team. If you were asked by the league right now, because the owners are meeting, they're talking about this policy, do you feel differently about the testing? Do you think that if the majority of players are vaccinated and asymptomatic, would you rather just all be out there together? What's your advice?
Yeah, my advice, as you can probably already guess, is I'm going to focus on my job and what I have to do, which is get the team ready to play Saturday. And we may have some guys that are unavailable, so we'll get some of their backups ready. But that's really where our focus has to go in a situation like this, Aditi. And I understand all the things that are going on outside of our building and whatnot, but we really have to keep our focus on what we have to do.
Hey, Kevin, I get what you're saying about keeping the focus on today and this week. So how do you get the players to not freak out or not be discouraged by the slew of positive tests?
Yeah, I think part of it, Scott, is having been through similar situations last season, looking around the league and what other people are dealing with. It's just another obstacle that's in the way. We have really good leadership on this team with our players, and I really believe that they're going to focus on the task at hand.
Hey, Kevin, with you this week, as you guys do these walkthroughs or practices, whatever they end up being, since you're participating virtually, I guess just what does that look like for you these next few days?
Yeah, I'm on the virtual call with the guys and making phone calls and sending text messages. I might peek through the fence from the outside, watching how they're doing. But I think the guys proved last year they don't need me. So I'm here. I'm going to support them. I'm going to do my job. But if I can't be out there with them on Saturday, they'll be ready to go.
Kevin, when it comes to those two players who were supposed to return to practice today, Ronnie Harrison and Harrison Bryant, if you're unable to take the field all week, can you make a decision on whether?
About 90 seconds, guys.
I do, Tony, because you watched Ronnie at practice last week. I saw Ronnie work out before the game. I've seen Harrison run. So I feel good about where they're progressing. And then, like you mentioned, if we didn't, hypothetically have that, but you could take them to the game and see them move around before the game. I think those are two very diligent players that I do think could play if that's how it shakes out.
Hey, Kevin, I was just wondering, you obviously have all these contingency plans throughout the season for this moment, but this one feels like it's ramping up a little bit bigger than maybe any of us expected. As this is happening and ongoing, are you working to create additional contingency plans? And what does that planning look like for you guys when you're faced with something this big now?
Yeah, I think that's what we do, Cam. You have plan A, you have plan B, and good thing those whiteboards can be erased. And listen, we have, and I said it yesterday, we have guys on this roster that we trust. We have guys on this roster
30 seconds
that are in the meetings, diligent about their preparation. And if we're calling on them this week, they'll be ready. That's what they do. That's their job. So again, our job as coaches, finding out who's available to us, and then putting together a game plan where these guys
10 seconds
free and play to the best of their ability. That's what we have to do this week. And really, like I mentioned,
you're hot.
Just adjusting hour by hour here.
All right, there you go, Coach. With a lot there and nothing too surprising. This feels like some of the press conferences that he had last year and the ones that he has. It's consistent with the messaging, which is no excuses. You're playing a game. That game will be played against the Las Vegas Raiders. We will meet them coming up next. Then about 15 minutes from now, we'll kind of go through, because I know this gets confusing for everybody. We'll do a deep dive. He's got it ready on this roster and who's here and who's not and kind of what it can look like at its best. So you have that to look forward to, which is nice. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. EOX Vantage has that local presence with a global footprint, trusted by some of the world's biggest brands. Here's a testimonial from EOX Vantage client Ed Scheel, Ed's Vice President at Skyward Specialty Insurance. The tools we've designed with EOX Vantage are real business changers that open the door for us to all sorts of valuable opportunities and efficiencies. They help the team members stay on the same page while collaborating remotely, make it easy to communicate with customers, cutting way down on manual data entry and the associated input errors, cut hours off processes and response times. Operationally, it's a brand new ball game for us, and it can be for you too. I encourage you to learn more about EOX Vantage by visiting www.eoxvantage.com or call 216-298-1616. And with that, we meet the Las Vegas Raiders. And the thing that you would say here is that this team has been through about as much as you can. They've had about every sort of emotional up and down this season. And for a while, it looked like they were going to be able to battle through it. But recently, it's been very rough, Dr. Z.
Yeah, they started off hot. They were 5-2, 1-5 since that point. They're about -80 in the point differential this season. And they've got some things that are good. I mean, it's a good passing offense, number 3 in the NFL, 287.8 yards per game. Derek Carr already is just right under 4,000 yards passing on the season, 3,926. He's completing 68.3% of his passes, but they lack physicality at the point of attack on both sides of the ball. 4 new offensive linemen from a year ago. They are 29th in rushing offense, 84.6 yards per game. They're averaging just 3.8 yards per carry as well. So they've struggled on the ground, but they can throw it through the air. And, you know, they might not have Darren Waller. They've lost Henry Ruggs, obviously, for the season, but they brought in Deshaun Jackson. They've had 5 games where they've thrown for more than 300 yards, Derek Carr has, so they can sling it. And Hunter Renfrow is becoming a star right before our very eyes. Hunter Renfrow's on a streak of 3 straight games with at least 8 catches and 100 yards receiving. Last week, he had 13 catches against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the 3rd most anybody's had in a game this season. And since week 12, he leads the NFL with 30 catches, 2nd in receiving yards, 353, 1st in receptions per game, 2nd in receiving yards per game, and tied for 4th in first down receptions with 15. He has become that go-to guy, that stud for them on offense. But where do they have problems? Well, and the things that are the most important, which is why they're losing. 31st on 3rd down offense, 29th red zone offense. And then you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. They are 20th in total defense, 26th against the rush, giving up 125.3 a game. But again, the things that matter the most, this is where they're not good. Scoring defense, they are 31st, 27.7 a game. They are 27th on 3rd down defense, 43.5% conversions allowed, and they are last in the red zone. 77.1% of their opponents' trips in the red zone lead to touchdowns. Only 13 takeaways on the season. That's 25th in the NFL. They have a negative plus-minus ratio in the turnover differential. They give up a lot of sacks. They've given up 31 so far this season, which is tied for 20th in the NFL. Our defense has produced 35, the 5th most. So it's a team that's got some studs. And now defensively, you'd say, okay, what do they got? Well, up front, 2 ends that are very good. Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby, along with a former first-rounder and Solomon Thomas. And those guys can get after the quarterback. Ngakoue's got 9, Crosby 5, Solomon Thomas 3.5. But it's those ends in a game where you don't have your tackles. That's what concerns you a little bit. They're going to play that cover 3. This is a Dan Quinn defense. We know what that means. It's from Seattle. Cover 3, get home with 4. They have the lowest blitz rate in the NFL, and so they're going to rely on those guys so they can have 7 in coverage. But I think the Browns can run the football on them. They have not been a good run defense, and the Browns, I think, really need to commit to that this week, line up, and punish them with Nick Chubb. The conditions we are expecting not to necessarily be great, and so you got to try to take advantage of that if you're the Browns and get after a team that really has struggled to stop the run, and it has struggled on those critical areas, 3rd down and red zone. This is not a great football team. They've got some great players. They have the ability to be explosive on offense and throw verticals down the field, but you have an opportunity, if you're the Browns, against this football team, I think, to really kind of do some damage on the ground. And you look at the games where they lose. You know, the Chiefs, who don't run the ball, put up 132 yards on them. You got the Bengals. Joe Mixon ran for 159 yards on them. They get 149 to the Giants, 135 to Philly. That's what we need to do to this football team, run on them, because the one time that they stopped the run recently was the Dallas Cowboys. 64 yards, 3.2 yards a carry. Guess what? That's the one game they've won in their last 6.
Yeah, that's it. And that was one of the more shocking results of the last 6 to 8 weeks in the National Football League was that loss for the Cowboys on Thanksgiving to these very Raiders. Now, I think what you've all been waiting for is, okay, great, what does our roster look like? Z said run the ball. How do we do it? What sets do we get in to try to do that? We will go over all of that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. And Beau here for my friends at Indy East 4th. Excited to be part of the great story of East 4th Street with its soft opening later this month. They're going to bring a music-themed atmosphere with Southern Comfort Cuisine and a rooftop patio bar to East 4th. That's a win for everybody. Unique menu items paired with barrel-aged cocktails like tequila old-fashioned. I like the sound of that. A little Don Julio and Yeho on that old tequila old-fashioned feels like a win. Oh, huge win there. Brought to you by the owners of Char Whiskey Bar and Grill and Avo Modern Mexican. So what you know from those guys is the liquor cabinet is going to look right. They're going to have all the things you want there because that's how they roll with that group. A gift card from Indy makes for the perfect holiday gift for that music and food lover in your life. Now through the holidays, any gift card over $50 purchased will receive an extra $10 added directly to the card. You can learn more at Indy East 4th on social. Just to reset, we've gone through kind of where we are with the COVID. Excellent stuff with Dan Graziano earlier, kind of letting you know where you are. And the big takeaway from that is don't expect to be rescued here. You're going to be playing this game on Saturday. There's not a number, I don't think. I asked him directly. I don't think there's a number that it would get to where you wouldn't play. So you're going to play, and you're up against a pretty hard television window. Let's remember, we play Christmas Day against the Packers. That wasn't put there on accident, okay? That was put there to go head-to-head with the NBA's biggest day and to beat them. And so you don't put Packers against Browns to not play that game on that day. So those things will all stand is pretty much the way that I read that. So that leads us to this. Who's left? How do we win? What's the roadmap, Z?
Well, here's who's left. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball and what I think our starting lineup would look like, given that you, as of now, would expect to be without Baker Mayfield, Austin Hooper, Wyatt Teller, Jedrick Wills, Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, and at this point, we would say Anthony Schwartz as well, as he remains in the concussion protocol. So wide receivers, your starters are going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones and Hollywood Higgins. Your backups are going to be Demetric Felton and Jamarcus Bradley. You also have the opportunity to elevate Alexander Hollins, who has just signed back to the team, who spent time with Kevin Stefanski in both Minnesota and here with the Browns a year ago, or Lawrence Cager, who was on your practice squad, who caught a touchdown for the Jets earlier this year and has been active for a game for the Browns this season. Your offensive line from left to right, I'm guessing it will be Blake Hance at left tackle, Joel Bitonio left guard, J.C. Treader at center, Michael Dunn at right guard, James Hudson at right tackle. Your tight end room should be a returning David Njoku with Harrison Bryant and Miller Forrestal alongside of him. Your running back room, Nick Chubb, Dearness Johnson, and Andy Janovich at fullback. So from an offensive standpoint, what could you do here? You could still run some 13 personnel where you would have one receiver, Donovan Peoples-Jones most likely, or Higgins with your three tight ends of the Chief, Harrison Bryant, and Forrestal. You can run some 22 personnel that would have Nick Chubb and Janovich in the backfield with the two tight ends, Njoku, Bryant, one receiver, Donovan Peoples-Jones, or even, some traditional, what you call 12 personnel, where you've got Nick Chubb in the backfield by himself, David Njoku, Harrison Bryant, and then you've got Donovan Peoples-Jones and Hollywood Higgins, or the other 21, Nick Chubb, Andy Janovich in the backfield, just the Chief at tight end, and two receivers, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Hollywood Higgins. I don't think we'll do a ton of 11 personnel. Maybe we will at times, putting Demetric Felton kind of in that Jarvis Landry slot role and in all the motions that we like to use. But that's where you are offensively. So your leading receiver is back, your leading rusher is here, and your quarterback is going to be Case Keenum, who has proven that he can win for you this season. He's a guy who was a starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos, so he's got familiarity with the AFC West and what it means to face the Raiders. And he's 1-0 so far as a starter for you this season. And so, in a game where the conditions could be such that it's going to be a lot of running, a lot of heavy looks. And right now, your backup offensive line, you got Nick Harris, and you've got Alex Taylor, who I would imagine will be elevated at tackle. You just signed another tackle today, and then you got a couple of guards who have been with you as well that probably will get activated. Froholt would be the one I would expect because he's been on the active roster before this year. But this is an offense that can still produce. You're going to have to help your tackles deal with Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue, but you've got, your top two leading receivers in DPJ and in David Njoku. You've got your leading rusher in Nick Chubb. You've got a very capable Dearness Johnson, who whenever has been called upon or asked to produce has. And you've got, a cup 3/5 of your starting line from a week ago, and a guy, Michael Dunn, who's played well for you in the playoffs, and a guy in Blake Hance who's played well for you. So that's where you are offensively. Defensively, at this point, you've got to expect to be without Malik McDowell, Tack McKinley, Ifeadi Odenigbo, Anthony Walker Jr., John Johnson III, and Troy Hill. Could Greg Newsome be back? Yes. From the concussion protocol, that just has to progress as is such. As of now, not yet back, and I think you really want him to be back because the notion of having Greg Newsome in the slot against Hunter Renfrow, who is setting the league on fire right now, I think is huge. So here's what we're looking at defensively. 3/4 of your starting defensive line is good to go. Myles Garrett, Malik Jackson, Jadeveon Clowney. Knock on wood as of right now. I would guess Jordan Elliott or Sheldon Day, who's played very well for you and has started in the Super Bowl for Chris Kiffin, your defensive line coach, when they were both with the Niners. They'll kind of fill in the Malik McDowell spot. Tommy Togiai is likely to be active as well as your 4th defensive tackle. Now, defensive ends, this is where you're hurt a little bit. No McKinley, no Odenigbo. They've been your top 2 backups, and McKinley got a game ball, 8 pressures last week, forced a fumble, played great. So we're not going to have what they call the cheetah package of 3 defensive linemen the way they like it, which is, Malik Jackson, Garrett Clowney, and Tack McKinley. But Porter Gustin's played big football for you before. Joe Jackson has played big football for you before. I expect both of those guys to end up filling up your defensive end room. Go to the linebackers. No Anthony Walker Jr. So far, knock on wood, that's it in that room. And you played with that last week. You got J.O.K., you've got Jacob Phillips, who's back, has a game under his belt. You got the veteran Malcolm Smith. You got Malk Wilson, Tony Fields, and Elijah Lee. You're actually pretty good in that room. Now we go to the defensive backfield. Start with the corners. And here's where it can get dicey. You got Denzel and Greedy on the outside. As of today, you don't have Greg Newsome or Troy Hill inside. And so you'd be down to your 3rd nickel. Now, that means that you have a guy, what you could do is have A.J. Green play outside, who's done well for you this year, with Greedy outside, and perhaps you move Denzel Ward inside to follow around or just to shadow Hunter Renfrow, who has been, as I said, elite. 2nd in the league in receiving yards, 1st in receptions over the last 3 weeks. Now you could also leave Denzel outside, Greedy outside, and then bring down, an M.J. Stewart into the nickel. So still some versatility there, but boy, you'd love to have Greg Newsome back. I think that makes things a lot easier for you. Safety room, John Johnson is out. We expect as of today. Now the good news is you got Grant and Ronnie should be back. So you could still have a very reasonable nickel that's got, if Newsome's back, it would be Grant and Ronnie with Denzel, Newsome, and Greedy. Feel great about that. If there isn't Greg, your nickel probably includes either M.J. Stewart or A.J. Green, depending on what they want to do. And if you go dime, M.J. Stewart would be that dime 3rd safety, and A.J. Green would probably be the 3rd corner in those situations. You'll likely have Herb Miller, who's been up for you the last couple of weeks, up again in that cornerback room. Javante Moffett up for you at safety because both of those guys are good special teams players and also can fill in roles for you there. Now, special teams, Colquitt's punting and holding for the Hammer. Chase still kicking. Your kick returner, I'm guessing Dearness Johnson did that well for you a year ago. Jamarcus Bradley can do it. DPJ can do it. Punt returner, you still have Felton here, but I wonder if they go with, DPJ just to kind of secure some of those catches that have been a little bit of an issue. But when you think about it, you still have, Pro Bowler in Batonio, Pro Bowler in Nick Chubb, and guy who should be a Pro Bowler in J.C. Treader, Pro Bowlers in Garrett and Clowney, a guy who I think should be a Pro Bowler in J.O.K. Denzel's playing elite. Ronnie's playing well. Grant's playing well. Greedy's playing well. You still have, while you're without a lot of people, you still have, gosh darn it, thanks to Andrew Berry, a pretty deep roster where you're saying, okay, this isn't a lot of guys that I haven't heard of being asked to play in big roles. Because it is.
There's a roadmap here. No, there's a pretty straight roadmap here on how to do it. And if you're looking for one gift from the football gods, it's the opponent, because the things that they struggle with fit well for what you're going to try to do on Saturday.
Right.
You think about the game plan offensively we had against Denver, and how critical every possession was, and how it was those short play action throws that had to be layups. Case made them layups. It was interesting. That was a close game, but you never, ever felt we were going to lose that game against Denver. And I would imagine a similar type of game plan will take place this Sunday against this Raiders team, except potentially even more commitment to the ground game. I mentioned earlier this week kind of an Army-Navy approach to this one offensively, which is just, it is a battle for inches. It's a battle for a yard. It's a battle for a foot. And field position will be key, and possessions will be precious. If you don't turn the ball over, There was a line that Jim Tressel got in a lot of trouble with when he was the head coach at Ohio State, and he said any possession that ends with a kick is a win, and people took it meant anything that ends with a punt or a field goal. What he means by that is anything where you don't turn it over is a win. And it was certainly a conservative way to look at it in the early 2000s in college football, but it might be the right way to look at it for these Cleveland Browns. Anything that ends in a good punt or a score is going to be a win on Saturday. And we have a group here offensively, and I think a roadmap for how you want to do it. You mentioned the 3 tight end sets. You mentioned Nick Tubb, Dearness Johnson, what those guys can do. Case is so sure-handed with what he wants to do. That strategy might be enough because what's required here is a win. We're not going to judge this team on Monday on, oh my gosh, it wasn't pretty enough. Can we win the Super Bowl? Well, no. No, you can't. Not like this. But you can stay alive. And all that's required to do that is to get a win. And you have plenty to be able to do that based on where we are right now.
Yeah, based on where we are right now. And again, we know that this very well could change tomorrow. But if we stay where we are right now, I believe that this football team is very well positioned. You know, this is kind of a Case Keenum kind of a game in the way that I envision the Browns' path to victory, which is to control the football, control the line of scrimmage. When layup passes are there out of play action, to hit those, be accurate with the football, not really necessarily have to stress them deep all that much. You're going to try to shorten this game, eliminate mistakes, and just put the football into the end zone against the worst red zone defense without doing necessarily anything fancy, much the same way we beat the Denver Broncos. I think that's the key. Now, this team throws it better than the Broncos, but does not have the ground game that the Broncos had. And I think that the way our defense is playing, we've been right there. Their offensive line is also not good. And the fact that you still have Miles and Clowney to generate pressure and disruption, I think is big. And then you go and you look at, yes, Deshaun Jackson, you need to be cognizant of him going vertical or on deep crosses. But it's really without Waller, and he didn't practice again today, it's a one-trick pony in the passing game. Now, they will take shots. Zay Jones will get some shots deep. They'll take their shots. But if we can limit, and we've been so good at that recently, limit the verticals and make them really get the ball down the field, I don't think that's what this Raiders team is very good at.
No, they're not. Just some news. We know that the NFL owners are meeting. We know that they're discussing protocols and where we're at. We can add that the Rams added 3 more players. So that's now 12 players today alone for the Rams on the COVID list. Mark Maskey, who covers the league for the Washington Post, saying the NFL is considering a protocol tweak that would allow vaccinated asymptomatic players who test positive to return to team activities sooner, sources say. Now, could that help us for this week? I guess they're the owners. They can do whatever they want. Could they get the NFLPA to get on board with this quickly, Z? I suppose that's would be the thing, as Dan was quick to point out when we had Graziano on earlier, was the notion of you're going to need the NFLPA to be on the same page with this, but I would think that they would be, but who knows? But potentially there could be some changes coming, and like I said earlier in the show, if you're looking for a silver lining in all of this, other than the fact that we still have a very good roster and a very deep roster and one that's more than capable of beating this Raiders team, it's that all the owners are in one place right now, and many of them are dealing with what we're dealing with here.
You're right, and there's more and more reports coming out that, the NFL is looking to reduce the amount of time a player is away from team activities if they are asymptomatic and vaccinated. And so the question becomes, how soon is that, right? We have a game on Saturday. Does this help us for this week?
That's my point.
That's what we don't know yet. I can tell you from positive, David Njoku 4 minutes ago posting on Instagram, missed y'all too. Good to be back. Let's get to work. And that echoes a lot of what we thought, that he would be back in time, certainly for this game. And it sounds like perhaps that's as early as today. No word from the team just yet on that, but something certainly to keep an eye on as it relates to the Cleveland Browns. But I mentioned the Chief in my roadmap there, that I thought he would be a part of what the Browns are going to be able to do this week, and it does appear that that will be the case based on his Instagram. And David Njoku, our leading receiver and really an important part of what we do through the air, and I think will be important in this game against a Raiders team that struggled with its linebackers and safeties and coverage.
Yeah, and what that allows for is when you think, you can almost envision this, folks, about what this could look like with Case in the play action game, run, play action off of it to Chief for a 7-yard gain that turns into a 20-yard pickup after he breaks the tackle. Like he would be an invaluable piece now, and looking like good news on that front that he will be back. So that allows for an even more crystallization of what the offensive plan could be and how you could have success for it by the time you get to Saturday against the Raiders. So that's where we stand right now. We're anticipating Case Keenum at the podium here momentarily. We're going to take a quick timeout. Before we do, though, do you love the Browns? Gain exclusive team access with the NFL Extra Points credit card for special ticket financing. 20% off at NFLshop.com and rewards like player meet and greets and signed memorabilia. Apply today at NFLExtraPoints.com. Get started with 10,000 bonus points after qualifying purchases. It's enough to redeem for a $100 statement credit. To learn more, visit NFLExtraPoints.com. The offer is subject to credit approval. You can see the application terms and conditions for complete details on that. We anticipate Case Keenum at the podium at the other side of this quick timeout. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Right now, Northeast Factory Direct has a ton of furniture in stock. You can go to Northeast Factory Direct, get exactly what you're looking for. They don't need all those gimmicky sales the other places have for tricking you into buying the furniture. They have the same low prices on the high quality furniture. It's year-round. Northeast Factory Direct has you covered, whether you're talking sofas, dining rooms, tables. mattresses, game room equipment, hot tubs, even kitchen cabinets. It's all the same furniture and brands that you're going to see at the other stores, but for a whole lot less. And here's the only way they're like the other stores. You're going to be buying a brand new piece of furniture. It's going to be delivered right to your home. You can check them out. I recommend you do. West 140th Street in Cleveland, Lakeland Boulevard, and Euclid or Freeway Drive in Macedonia, or shop them online anytime at northeastfactorydirect.com. Case Keenum going to be at the podium here momentarily. Before we get to that, just get you updated on where we are around the league, because, yes, we're still playing games for this weekend, obviously. We mentioned obviously we've talked ad nauseum about the outbreaks here. We know that similar things are going on at the Washington football team, at the Rams as well. I think 11 in Washington, 12 with the Rams now in terms of the total positive cases there. We know that the owners are meeting. We know that there is some chatter about potentially limiting the amount of time that a player could be out with COVID. So that's something to keep an eye on as we continue to monitor this on the field and in the AFC. A couple of quarterback news. John Harbaugh saying that Lamar Jackson is day-to-day for the Ravens. Remember, they play the Packers this week, so that's a full day for them. And then Mitch Trubisky taking snaps in Buffalo as Josh Allen had a sprained foot, though he feels quite a bit better. And I did see that apparently he took in a Broadway show in Buffalo last night, so he has that going for him, which is very, very nice. So that is kind of where you sit around the league heading into this weekend. And what should be a pretty wild and I guess this is the thing that kind of stinks about all this, isn't it, Z? When you think about it, this is a league right now where in fact I don't know that this has ever happened. This late in the season, no team has clinched a playoff spot. So they got what they wanted. I think you have to go all the way back to when we went up to 16 games for the last time this late in the year. So part of that is adding the 17th game, obviously. But there's not a team that has clinched. It's the latest that's happened. And what you wanted was what was on the schedule, which was a mad dash for 14 playoff spots. And hopefully we get that, and it's not marred by protocols and COVID outbreaks around this league.
No, and that's why I think, the fact that you've got, a 4-week season now to determine all 14 of those playoff spots, that's exciting. And the Browns are certainly in the mix of it. And more stuff kind of keeps filtering out that I don't know if they're just testing the waters, but I saw something that said that they're considering allowing asymptomatic vaccinated players to play, but to go back to daily testing. And that if you do have symptoms, you would not be able to play. And if you are unvaccinated, even doesn't matter if you're asymptomatic or not, you would not be able to play. So I don't know what's going to ultimately come out of this, but the NFL's got to put something in place. And what I think about it is, putting my Browns lens on again, is that they need to make a decision immediately on this, because it needs to. You cannot have it impact if in a 4-week season, which is what we have now for all Correct. 14 playoff spots. One game is 25% of that season. And so you cannot have one team have to play a game under a set of rules that are different than what everybody else is going to play for their 4 games. So this needs to be, if that is the drastic direction they go, which I would think is a very drastic direction, by the way, and one that I would be here for, they need to immediately come to that resolution.
There's plenty of time to do it. It's Wednesday. We don't play to Saturday. It's the right thing to do. If you're going to make an amendment to it, then it needs to be done now. Everybody's together. All the powerful people are together. Everybody's at the owners' meetings. It'd be very simple to get everybody in a room and say, what's the right way to handle this? Let's get it handled. Let's get it applicable for this week. It's not just us. It's Washington. It's the Rams. All 3 of those teams are in the hunt.
Yeah.
They're all in the hunt. They're all going to play critical games this weekend, okay? So there's plenty of time to get this right. There's plenty of time to make sure that that everyone's on an even playing field here. You cannot have this where these 3 teams, because it sounds like the Rams are in a lot worse even situation than we are by the time all is said and done. We got to remember it's still early out there, and they didn't start doing this until yesterday was their first day of testing. Today's their second, so we don't even have their full list yet, and already they're at 12. So it could be a lot worse out there by the time all is said and done. You can't have it affect these teams, and it's the perfect time. This week's games have not started yet. You have time to change this and get it right, or don't change it at all. leave it what it is, and everybody plays by the same rules
for the
going
rest of the
forward.
season. Yep.
It's got to be one or the other. I don't think you can change it next week after playing this week.
No. And for the football team plays the Eagles, a divisional game, and the Rams host the Seahawks, also a divisional game, and the Browns obviously playing the Raiders. And the Browns, just to let you know where we're at right now, this line opened up with the Browns at -6. Following the news of the last 2 days, the Raiders are now 1.5-point favorites over the Cleveland Browns. The line has moved more than a touchdown in response to this news. Lines don't move a touchdown in the NFL, folks. That doesn't happen.
No. That's the situation you're in. Boy, now we're seeing more even on the from the Chiefs as well. Willie Gay going on the COVID-19 list. Okay, so this is I think there was reportedly earlier this week upwards of 80 players in the league. And
the highest it had been. Yeah.
Highest it had ever been, even going back to last year. And then you've also seen even more start to trickle out as the week goes along. And much of this stuff is reported. We can confirm, obviously, because our organization has put out our COVID list. But remember, some of these West Coast teams, it's still relatively early in the day out there, and so we're not seeing those lists in their entirety at this point. So that's something that certainly bears watching going forward. So, you hope that there can be some common sense here and that there can be a fair resolution to this, because to me it's one or the other. Either you amend it right now, you get it done this afternoon, you get the NFLPA on the phone, and you get this thing sorted out. Of course, it'd have to be collectively bargained, or you leave it and you say, sorry, boys, these were the rules. It stinks, but this is where we're at, and you deal with them. This is what the league did last year. After those early postponements with the Titans specifically, I remember, obviously, the league said, hey, we're going to play games. We played without any receivers. We won a playoff game without our head coach. The Denver Broncos played a game without a quarterback. I don't know if people remember that because they weren't a playoff team, but it happened. And I don't know if that's the best use of what's going on right now or the best consequence for what's going on right now is a situation where you're playing without a quarterback. And so that's something to watch here this weekend as these names keep trickling out. We know Chris Jones was placed on that list yesterday, and so that is the second member of the Chiefs defense getting hit. You did see the Mike Garafolo.
So that the NFL is providing a bit more flexibility for rosters in the postseason. There will be unlimited promotions from the practice squad to the active roster. Previously, players were capped at 2 promotions. Now they can be promoted a third time and more in the playoffs. So that says to me that right now they are not going to change anything about asymptomatic vaccinated players. That's preparing for needing to have more promotions from the practice squad, right?
Yeah.
Which, as you said, is one of the options. Just continue under the same rules going forward, which it just has to be equitable for everybody. And look, if you're the Browns, the one thing that you can feel not great about, but one thing that you could feel decent about is that if you can find a way, and I believe this football team, as we laid out the football team as it stands right now, absolutely can beat this Raiders team. Yeah. You find a way to do that, you're going to be in real good shape, better shape than most teams going into the final stretch.
Yeah.
Because you will have gone through one of the big outbreaks on your roster.
Yeah. You just have to get there. That's the point you got to get to here. Is that point. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family owned and operated. Whether you join them as a customer, as an employee, you'll be part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. We had anticipated Case Keenum being available. Let's take a quick time out. Maybe Case will be available after it. We want to hear from Mike Preefer as well. We're going to navigate these waters a little bit here over the next couple of minutes as we wait on Case. He was due around 2:15. So hopefully we get him coming up, and it'd be fascinating to hear what he has to say. Mike Preefer is your acting head coach. That worked the last time. We'll see if it can work this time as well. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. friends, watching the Browns alone means no one's going to hear your amazing in-game analysis, and the same is true in gambling. Keep things social. Never gamble alone. It's just one of the helpful, responsible gambling tips you'll find at keepitfunohio.com. And now here's Coach Preefer, who'll be your head coach on Saturday.
You know, we've been here before.
You guys are down.
The great thing about this organization is that there's always a contingency plan, you know, from Andrew to Kevin and everybody. So it's the next man up scenario that we had a year ago. And, you know, our guys were locked in this morning. We had really good meetings, OD and special teams. And we'll come in here this afternoon for that split walkthrough that you guys know about to be safe, you know, keep everybody separated as much as we can. And hopefully we won't have any more positives. And we'll get ready to go win this game on Saturday afternoon.
There are contingency plans, and then there are situations that get a little bit out of control like this is now. How much worry is there, Mike, that we're not done with positive tests?
You know, I don't know. You sit here worry. I'm a pretty positive attitude guy. You know, we're hoping that there won't be any more. That was the goal yesterday, and we had a few more today, unfortunately. And hopefully that the tide has stopped, and you know, we could go to the game with the guys we have. You know, we're going to bring up some guys from the practice squad, and some guys that aren't used to playing a lot of football are going to have to go out and play a lot of football. But that's why they're here. I mean, that's our practice squad is more of a developmental type squad, not just out there to practice for bodies. You know, we bring guys in here that we think have a chance to help us win someday, and especially in the age of COVID, that, you know, you always have to have that contingency as well when you do sign a young man to the practice squad.
You mentioned this off the top that you guys went through this last year and have been through this before. So how has that sort of helped with this transition this week?
Well, I think anytime you're in this situation, you know, you've been through it before, you know what worked before. You know, you always learn from the good and the bad. And you know, because like I said, we're so organized here, we have a plan for pretty much everything. And, you know, we just got to try to follow that blueprint and prepare and prepare for this game as best we can with the time that we have. And, you know, we've played a lot of football this year so far, so our guys know how to play the game. We know our game plans are going to be geared to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. And, you know, the quicker they pick this up, our guys pick this up, the better off we're going to be. And, you know, utilize the time that's available between now and Saturday afternoon. We have plenty of time to get ready, and we will be ready.
And then for you, how do you kind of balance, obviously, your duties as the special teams coordinator, but also the possibility that you've got to be ready to coach on Saturday?
Well, Coach Stefanski will be the head coach up until kickoff. So he's going to handle all that like he always does, like he did a year ago. My job's made pretty easy. We have great coordinators. We've got a great staff. We've got a team that is resilient, that arrives at the challenge like we did a year ago. You know, I think game management stuff I'll review again with Dave Giuliani. Dave and I have already talked. He's given me a list of stuff I got to review. The same thing we did last year. We met for hours last year before that Pittsburgh playoff game, and we'll meet again this week and make sure that we're all on the same page. I know the lingo, the terminology, and you know, you just trust that you know, Joe and AVP will do a great job calling the game, and we'll do a great job on special teams. That's the plan.
Hi, Mike. Can you estimate just on the known COVID casualties, how many positions on your units have been affected?
On special teams units?
Yes.
Well, several. I mean, obviously, anytime, you know, if a safety goes down or a linebacker goes down, a defensive end goes down, a running back goes down, I mean, any wide receiver, any of that stuff, it's all affected. It's like, but, you know, it's a good question because I was doing the depth charts for tomorrow's practice. And, you know, we're planning on having a full practice tomorrow, we're hoping. And, you know, we're going to work on all 6 special teams phases, work on offense, work on defense. So when I'm doing the depth charts, it's typical. It's like having an injury. You know, if a running back gets hurt, the next running, like Jonas Johnson moves up, and then backup running back, the next running back up becomes a starter or more of a factor on special teams. It's like game day, but you have a few more days to plan for it. So, you know, we're going to get everybody ready that needs to get ready, and we should have plenty of guys that are prepared to play the game that will help us win.
And with Natson going down, would you say that Felton gets another chance this week?
Yeah, you know, he'll be ready. Ernest will be ready. Donovan will be ready. You know, those guys will be ready. Jamarcus Bradley's got some return ability. He'll be up as well. So we'll get him ready as well.
Yeah, Mike, you talked about being through this before, but is there something that you will do differently this time?
I won't challenge the pass that was caught at the knees like the last year. It was the dumbest challenge in the history of the league. So I won't do that, I promise.
And just the fact that Coach Stefanski told us yesterday that he had the booster, does that somewhat alarm you? You know, just that, you know, about how vulnerable everyone is?
I'm not alarmed by it. It doesn't surprise me. It's been insanity for almost 2 years now. So, I just kind of roll with the punches. I mean, that's all you can do. If I get alarmed by it, then I won't be able to do my job at a high level.
If you are not able to have a practice tomorrow, if it's another walkthrough, how concerning would that be for you with so many moving parts that your team would be ready to play on Saturday?
I think the mental part, they'll be more than ready. Like I said, Alex and Joe and myself will do a great job getting our guys ready and getting them in the right spots. And, if this was week 1 or 2, I think it'd be different, but it's week, what is it, our 14th game. So it's week 15. So because we have so much football under our belt, I'm not as concerned about the physical part of it, but you'd like obviously to have a practice before you go out and play.
Hey, Mike, I got some special teams questions for you. With Chase, are you noticing any pattern with the misses that he's had?
The only thing I can tell you is that I think he needs to keep his head down a little bit longer and follow through towards his target a little bit more. That's something we've talked about now the last few weeks. I don't believe he did that on the one he missed. Obviously, that's one that we have to have in the fourth quarter, which would have made it, I think, a 18-point game. That was a big miss, and he needs to make those.
And with the onside kick, looked like a lot of linebackers out there on the hands team. Can you just explain the philosophy behind that?
I'm not putting anybody out there that doesn't have good enough hands to recover a kick, but you need bodies out there to protect in front of the whoever ends up with the ball. Usually it's a tight end. We had Hooper on one side. We had Donovan on the other side, so it's a bigger receiver or a tight end. Andy's recovered 2 onside kicks last year. I trust him fully. He'll be out there again this week. He understands what he did. We always talk about if you can recover that ball right at you, make a quick decision, grab it and go down. And if it's too hot or too fast or it's a bad bounce, get out of the way and then block. He didn't do either. And he knows that. And we talked about it. We showed it this morning, and that should never happen. And I think we were aligned perfectly. We spent a lot of time in the offseason making sure we had the right alignments, and spent a lot of time with Coach Stefanski on the best. We spent hours and the best way to handle that with the new rule. That wasn't a factor at all. We were aligned perfectly. We just didn't execute the play. But I do want to add, I know people might have mentioned the hands team playing the field goal. Up until that point, I thought we had played really well in teams. We covered kicks extremely well. We kept the ball out of the punt returner's hand. We made 4 other kicks. The play that JoJo made was a phenomenal play. Janovich had a great play on the mortar kick. I mean, we handle all those situations extremely well. We had 2 bad plays that we can't have in order to put away a good football team. We can't make those mistakes. But up until that point, I thought we played pretty well.
Hey, Mike, obviously with you and Alex Van Pelt handling those duties, filling in for Kevin in Pittsburgh, that gives you guys experience.
About a minute, guys.
I'm wondering if you see kind of a similar scenario with Case Keenum. It wasn't in a playoff game, but primetime game on Thursday night, you guys had to turn to him. What is your feel for Case Keenum, and do you have any thoughts on Baker? Obviously, with all the injuries he's gone through this season, and now another turn for him with COVID.
Obviously, I feel bad for Baker. He's the leader of this football team as our quarterback. Losing him hurt, but the great thing about Case is, he's an amazing young man. I've known Case a long time. We were together in Minnesota. He's always stepped up to the occasion. When his name was called, he's always been there. He led us to the playoffs in Minnesota. I think we ended up 13-3 that year, and he was our quarterback for one game, I think.
15 seconds.
The Broncos did a phenomenal job. Thank God we have Case Keenum, I'll be honest with you, because if you had a real young quarterback, an experienced quarterback, it might be tougher. But Case is going to run the game plan exactly how
you're hot.
The whole team has confidence in him.
I would also say, thank goodness we have Mike Preefer. I would add that to the list of things that you're thankful for.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's a stability that he provides to this, and was so sure-handed in the game last year where we had to pinch hit for coach. And I look, this isn't fun, but experience does help, and we have been down this road before here in terms of being without our head coach and various members of our team. And so we had to deal with this last year. We'll have to deal with it on Saturday.
You're right about that. The Browns have had to deal with this before. They are 1-0 under this circumstance where they do not have their head coach. Mike Preefer did that. Now he said he's going to be better on the challenges, since last year that was not his finest moment in that wild card win over the Steelers. But yeah, this is just find a way. This is all hands on deck, as they like to say. Certainly something Mike Preefer would appreciate as a Navy man. You have got to just figure out a way to grind it out. And the total for this game, while the line has moved so much, the total is at 38. It is not expected to be a high-scoring game. It's going to come down to execution. It's going to come down to touchdowns over field goals. It's going to come down to making your field goals when you attempt them. A turnover here or there, that is what is going to define this football game. And for the Cleveland Browns, the opportunities that they set out to accomplish, the things they wanted, the goals they set out to accomplish at the beginning of the season are all right there for them. And you have people who have either waited for an opportunity like this, or guys, quite frankly, who have done it before. You think of a Sheldon Day stepping up for a Malik McDowell. He started in a Super Bowl. Malcolm Smith's been a Super Bowl MVP. He and Jacob Phillips, who was, on a national championship college team, filling in for Anthony Walker Jr. You've got guys that have done it at a high level. Case Keenum filling in, the Chief back. Michael Dunn's done it for you in the playoffs before. Blake Hance has done it for you all year. Hollywood Higgins has made huge plays for you throughout his career. Everybody that's going to be given an opportunity in this game due to the COVID issues that the Browns are experiencing right now have all done it at one point or another in their careers and have an opportunity to cement themselves as valuable pieces of this roster or some other in 2022 in the National Football League. And this is a tremendous opportunity for a lot of guys, but it's also a tremendous responsibility for our football team and for, I would say, the healthy stars of our football team to absolutely bring it in this game on Saturday against the Raiders.
Yeah, I like what you say at the end there, that you think about the healthy stars of our football team. Man, this is a Nick Chubb game. This is a Denzel Ward game. This is a Myles Garrett game. You mentioned Denzel potentially, but who knows what the thinking about this will all be by the time you get to Saturday. But you think about him, Renfro, do you just shadow? Do you try to take him away?
Yep.
Is that what you do? That speaks to me when I think about, some of the struggles that the Raiders have had protecting the quarterback. And Myles is just unblockable anyway. Him and Jadeveon be able to do it. And this is one that I think Nick Chubb has been prepared for his whole life. You want to hand me the ball 35 times? Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
35 carries, 148 yards. Let's go. I think that's I think he's for that. And I think that's something that's well within his grasp. But I think, in a way, Keenum is really a perfect quarterback for this. A veteran who's been through it. He's so even. He's so even on everything. We saw how well he played in the game against Denver. He's really he's being compensated well here because of the trust that this organization has in him to do exactly this, that when your starter, your leader is down, you come in, you stabilize the situation, and he's really the perfect guy to be able to do it. I think that as long as it stays where it is, Z, and we'll keep that as the caveat to all of this, as long as it stays where it is, and you mentioned there are a couple of places on the roster where you could have a few more things happen, not much, but a few more, and it just speaks to the overall roster depth that Andrew Berry has built here in the last 2 years, that you're even able to be in the position you're at. But as long as you don't have anything else or very little else, there is a pretty straight roadmap here. And you still have superstars on this roster who right now are playing, and they're good enough to be able to beat this team at home, at your place, a team where the conditions could be brutal, and you're kind of built for it. So it should set up nicely, all things considered.
You're exactly right about that. Should set up very, very well for this Browns team in the sense that what your strengths are and in these conditions what they would need to be are the weaknesses of your opponent, and their strengths in these conditions do not necessarily set up well for them. And even if they are able to throw it, I like our pass rushers with Garrett and Clowney still healthy for you, Sheldon Day, Malik Jackson up front, Porter Gustin, Joe Jackson, to go get after Derek Carr and create problems for them. Now, Case Keenum has faced the Raiders as a starter at home once in his career. When he did that as the member of the Denver Broncos, he won that game 20-19. And I think we would all say we'd probably be looking at a very similar style football game this one. And 20-19, boy, that sure would be music to all of our ears. So that's what you're hoping for when Case was in the AFC. That's what he did as a starter at the Denver Broncos, beat them in that one home game, and that's what you're hoping that he can come and do one more time. That's why the investment was made in Case Keenum. That's why the investment was made in so many of the guys on this roster. And one of the things we've talked about ad nauseum is the depth that has been put here, and that depth is going to be tested. But it was tested last week against the Ravens, considering 3 of the guys that were in your back 7 didn't play. And yet you were able to get it done on defense. Guys stepping up. Grant Delpit, that was the first time he'd had to do it all. and play the full game. And he does it because he's a guy who had played at a high level in big games before in LSU, and the moment wasn't too big for him. This is a playoff game for the Browns. You have a lot of guys who have either got playoff experience, who have big game experience, whether it be collegiately or in the National Football League, who are going to be ready for this. They're going to be ready for it.
Yep. Browns fans get into First Energy Stadium quicker on game day with Express Access. Enroll free today to enter through exclusive lanes at each entrance, plus use Express Access for a chance to win a signed Myles Garrett jersey. Other prizes at the end of the season. Click on the Tickets tab on the Browns mobile app to learn more. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. And be sure to catch the Browns preview show tonight at 7, University Hospital's Cleveland Browns Radio Network. James Hudson, the voice of the Browns, will be, and of course Jim Donovan will join Kenny and Gerard on the program tonight. Boy, I tell you what, this is a crazy day in what has been a crazy week around the league. Let's remember, it is just Wednesday, or as I like to refer to it as First Friday. If you'd like a cocktail, tonight one might be appropriate.
1 minute.
All of this. But I think Z did a pretty damn good job there in the 2 o'clock hour, just kind of going over the realities of this roster and how thankful you ought to be for the real depth that is here, because it's extraordinary that you can be without. I mean, I was counting, what are we talking, like a dozen regulars potentially?
Yeah,
Something like
guys that are listed on the starting
30
on the depth
seconds.
chart. Yeah, about a dozen.
About a dozen. And you can still put a team out there that is more than
legit.
capable of beating a 6-7 team in the NFL.
Yep.
That says a lot. That says a lot about where you are as a franchise.
20.
Next level is going to carry you through the rest of the afternoon. We are back tomorrow. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.